and fellow riders. Warm welcome to Horse Talk. And we are going to talk about 5 possible reasons horses behave bad and how to solve it. Yes, so tune in if you have a horse that you feel like could behave better. But first off the bat, I have to tell you that one person's bad behavior could be another person's dream. So if you're anything like me, when you are riding a horse that lacks forward, you wish for a horse with more forward, right? But when riding a horse with lots of forward, I tend to wish for a more relaxed horse. And I think like this is more like a number one tip. If you That's not bad behavior. That's different personalities of horses. Some horses are more energy conservant than others, and some horses are more anxious and outgoing than others. But my first tip to solve this, which isn't bad behavior in a way, it's just a personality trait, is to work on forward and motivation with the horse that lacks forward, and work on relaxation and slowing down with the horse that is more rushy and has lots of forward. Because if you have a horse who lacks forward and you get that horse more forward and responsive, you're going to have a dream horse who is both brave and forward. And once you get your anxious and forward horse calmer and more able to slow down, then you will also have a brave and fittingly forward horse. So by working on just one thing at a time, we can get huge results. Yes. So let me know in the comments below if your horse is forward or if your horse could use some more forward. Because both these things are quite easily solved if we work on just one thing. And that one thing is going to balance the horse. And sometimes that one thing is motivation for forward, and sometimes that one thing is relaxation and calmness. And by working on just that one thing, the horse is going to become more balanced. But if we work a little bit on this and a little bit on that, and we might not get as quick results with getting the dream horse out of the horse we already got. But this evening, I'm not going to talk about that in particular. I'm going to talk about more like serious bad behavior, like bucking and bolting and anxiety and spooking and rearing, and what we consider bad behavior. And I also want to say that since horses, obviously they can't speak with words, so they very often speak through their behavior. And I would definitely think that if a horse is behaving badly, I tend to want to know a little bit, try to figure out the reason why. Because if we know the reason why, it's easier to solve it. But I also don't want to be stuck in that narrative of the reason why. So I feel many questions, they kind of get stuck, like my horse is spooking because this and that and da 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 da. And that's okay. But how are we going to fix it? So this live is about 5 common reasons why horses behave badly and how we can solve them. And I think number one reason, which is very often referred to online and everywhere else, is like the pain card. Yes, the horse is in pain. That's why the horse is behaving bad. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. Maybe there are very many horses out there in pain, but I feel that it becomes kind of sometimes like an excuse, because I've had many horses over the years, and sometimes they are in pain. They get injured, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they start behaving badly. Yes. But if you suspect your horse is in pain, get a veterinarian or osteopath or a chiropractor or whoever to check your horse and see if that is the case or not. So I'm not going to help you solve that. But many horses, they still have this bad behavior, although the pain is solved, by the way. So that's the kind of second thing. So if your horse has been behaving bad because of pain, and then the pain is solved, the behavior might still be there. So although the reason might be pain, the solution isn't always just fixing the pain. We have to do something more. And I think that my next kind of number one reason for bad behavior will explain how you can go about that. So, for instance, if the tack isn't fitting or the saddle isn't fitting, that's going to cause pain to the horse, which might also cause bad behavior. It might cause the horse to buck and bolt and, react negatively to the rider mounting the horse because the saddle is pinching the horse. If you then get a new saddle that's not pinching the horse, the behavior might still be there because the horse associates the saddle and being ridden with pain. So changing the tack doesn't necessarily fix the problem. And that's when Liberty becomes a great tool for solving it. Because if let's say we have an ill-fitting saddle pinching the horse, here we change the saddle to a comfortable saddle that isn't pinching the horse, that horse might still have the memories of the pinching and the pain. And if we simply just tie the horse up and put the new saddle on, that horse isn't able to express this uncomfort with the saddle. But if we, on the other hand, have the horse free at liberty, so that the horse can leave and, express the discomfort with the saddle, and then we can saddle the horse when the horse chooses to be saddled, we have solved the problem of the saddle memories in a much better way than simply just tying the horse up and putting the saddle on, if you follow. So Liberty can be a great tool for solving bad behavior because of pain. First you solve the pain, and then you solve the bad behavior through liberty and choices, so the horse is able to speak its mind and get over it. Yes, because if we don't do that, we risk that anxiety starts building up in the horse and stuff. And although we have then solved the saddle issue, we might have not solved the behavior issue. Yes, and then the third reason for horses behaving badly, which I think might be the most common reason, actually, and that is the wrong appliance of the release. So the release becomes wrong. Or in some cases, the reinforcement, the positive reinforcement becomes wrong. And it tends to be more common with negative reinforcement and the release than with positive reinforcement. But it can happen either way. So if the reinforcement is wrong, we might accidentally reinforce bad behavior. And this is quite common, actually. So we might have started training our horse with treats or something, and suddenly the horse becomes very pushy and, starts barging into you and starts nipping and doing a whole lot of stuff. That is bad behavior. There's a high chance that we have actually made that bad behavior happen through the reinforcement. Yes. Or if, like, a horse who is tied up learns to break loose, then, the release becomes wrong, because when the horse feels the pressure of the lead rope, instead of stepping forwards to the slack, the horse is pulling backwards and then gets the release, and then which will reinforce the horse to pull more and more backwards. So bad behaviors like that, we need to ask ourselves, like, where is the release? and apply the release when the horse is doing the right thing and not when the horse is doing the wrong thing. And the same for positive reinforcement. We might ask ourselves, what are we actually reinforcing here? Yeah, and sometimes horses can be a bit difficult to read, definitely. So we need to be able to try and see this before it happens, so we don't reinforce the wrong thing. But something that has helped me tremendously with training horses is just asking myself, where is the release? And very often with bad behavior, the release tends to happen when the horse does the bad stuff. Like a horse who's rearing, where does the release happen? Yeah, when the horse rears up, the rider leans forwards and releases the reins, which is then releasing the horse for rearing. But very often, of course, the reason for the rearing is often too much pressure in the reins. So that's also a very good way to get the release right, is to use less control, especially if you are using negative reinforcement with your horse, which is the most common way of training horses. Then the release is very important. And if we have some kind of constant contact or constant pressure, it becomes very, very hard to time the release right. For instance, one bad behavior could be the horse being stiff in the bit and going against the bit. And if we then start pulling and the horse, does the right thing by responding to that pressure, very often when the horse responds, we have a tendency to keep on pulling because we can't stop the pulling in an instant. But if we are not pulling, but we're just picking up the rein and giving a slight signal and just keeping our hand steady, and when the horse then responds correctly, there will be an instant release. So basically doing less and being mindful of where the release is. And very often when riders are riding, there's a lot of stuff happening at the same time. And if we then use a rein aid that the horse goes a little bit against, and we try to use a leg aid that the horse doesn't really respond to, then, bucks, bolt, rearing, refusing to respond to signals, stuff like that can happen. The bad behavior happens basically because we are not good enough at timing the release. Yes. So that was 4 reasons right off the bat. No, the 4th reason that I almost forgot, which is also very important, is of course the environment. Yes. So if you now have ruled out pain, if that's possible, but you have at least made sure by checking with your vet that the horse isn't in pain, you make sure the tack is fitting, you make sure the release is right, and that we haven't been accidentally rewarding on or releasing on bad behavior. Then, of course, the environment is huge. Yes, because the environment and the conditions the horse is living under will, of course, affect how they feel and how they behave. And I personally believe that horses need to have a freedom of space to roam, and they also feel much better when together with other horses. And they also feel better when they have access to forage. So if these 3 things are lacking, just fixing that can dramatically change the horse's behavior. Yes, but failing to fix it can sometimes make it hard to, get huge results with a horse. So if a horse is standing a lot inside in the stall and is eating lots of grains and maybe getting ulcers from that, and then is out in the paddock alone and, doesn't really have the space to move and to interact with other horses, that can hugely affect their behavior, and they can start pinning their ears and become grumpy and start biting, or anxiety can build up inside them and they start bolting, and you have a whole lot of stuff going on that you can easily solve by actually changing the way you keep your horse. At least I have found that, because I have over the years gotten a lot of horses others have given up on, and by introducing them to herd life and being outside and have free access to forage and friends and freedom to roam can make a huge difference. Yes. And I also would like to say, like, trauma has been very often kind of a cause that very many people say is like the reason for the horse behaving bad. But trauma, like one incident creating trauma, it can of course happen, but it is not, probably not as common as people would think. But I can try to explain like the reasons for trauma. So if like this horse who has learned to break free from halters and lead ropes, if that horse, for instance, kind of does it one time by accident, it can be a lot easier to fix than if that horse does it, this breaks free when the horse is under a lot of pressure. Because horses tend to remember and learn very much where if things happen when they are in a very aroused state. So like if the horse is tied up somewhere and is like terrified and it's a dramatic event and then the horse breaks free, things happening later that is similar to that event can trigger this huge memory. But in my experience, the most common trauma like horses have is that the release has been slightly wrong applied over a longer period of time. So it happens kind of a little bit every day, and then it kind of becomes a habit. And horses, they don't necessarily stay the same. They either get better or they get worse. So yeah, at least in my experience, that's more common than a dramatic traumatic event in a horse's life. It's more common that release or reinforcement has been applied slightly wrong over time, and then it evolves and becomes more and more and more, which actually makes it very, very easy to fix. Because if you just stop applying the release wrong or the reinforcement wrong, that horse is going to hugely improve in a short amount of time. But here the devil is a little bit in the details. Yes, like how we lead the horse and how we use our reins and stuff like that. And this might make it seem complicated, but if we just focus on one little detail at a time, then it's very easy. Yes. So that brings me to the fifth reason horses behave bad, which is actually quite common. And that is separation anxiety. I think that could probably be one of the main causes for bad behavior in horses, because horses are herd animals. And when we kind of take them away from the herd where they feel safe, they are looking for present company so that they feel safe when not in the herd. But very often we tend to maybe not notice this, that that's what the horse is doing, but we notice the spooking and freeze mode and lack of focus and the horse neighing and kind of going bananas. Like especially when we take the horse away from home to a show or a clinic or something, and the horse is behaving perfectly well at home, but once we then take the horse away from their natural environment where they are together with the herd and other horses, they suddenly change and become almost unrecognizable. And I think that's because the separation anxiety kicks in. And separation anxiety is actually also very, very easy to solve once we recognize that this is separation anxiety and once we know what to do for solving it. Then actually a few sessions with very, very simple groundwork can do wonders, in addition to changing a couple of routines so that the separation anxiety becomes less and less. And also these routines makes it also possible for us to avoid the separation anxiety altogether, because it's actually easier to prevent it than to solve it, but it's not so hard to solve as someone would think. And right now we have a free training where you can get everything you need to succeed with solving separation anxiety, that many riders and horse trainers have gotten huge results from doing. They have basically, after a few sessions, gotten their dream horse. I remember in particular a children's horse who had a huge separation anxiety and wasn't suitable for kids to ride at all. But since they had bought the horse as a children's horse, they didn't really know what to do. But then they figured maybe the horse has separation anxiety. And after solving the separation anxiety, this horse is now safe to ride for kids, even at clinics and shows and, in unfamiliar places. Something they actually never thought possible, because this was doomed like a crazy pony. But by solving the cause of the bad behavior, which in this case was separation anxiety, they actually got a dream pony. And that could be the case for you too. But I definitely hope these 5 tips also help. So pain, ill-fitting tack, wrong release, and trauma possibly, or slight trauma over time. And then if the horse has separation anxiety, which very often is the cause, then make sure to join the free training, which you can find on ridelikeaviking.no/trust. And it's absolutely free, and you get everything you need to succeed. And I can also paste the link here down below so that you can get instant access to it. And while you're here, I also thank you so much for joining. And let me know in the comments below which of these tips you found the best. Yes. So thank you so much for joining, and see you next Wednesday. Okay. Bye for now.